Storms will come into our lives. Storms will come into our lives. And by the way, this was a serious storm. So bad, in fact, that these seasoned sailors began to fear for their lives. In fact, in the original language, the word that is used to describe it is also used to speak of an earthquake. So it was a seismic megastorm covering the boat with water so you couldn't even see it. One translation from Mark's gospel says that there was a whirlwind revolving from below upward, sweeping down on the lake, and the boat was filling with water, and they were in great danger. I don't know if you've ever been in a storm at sea. I've been in a few, but I've never been in a boat like this. I've seen a boat similar to what these guys were in. Recently in Israel, they discovered what they called the Jesus boat. It's a boat dating back to the times of Christ, a first century fishing boat. No one knows for sure if it's the boat that Jesus and his disciples used, but certainly it's a boat that would be similar to the boat they were on. So you get a sense of the seaworthiness of the craft and what their ships or boats looked like back in those days. And it was very simple, very primitive, and I'm sure this was very frightening. There are some people that have spent a lot of time at sea and they have their sea legs and they're not alarmed by things like this. Have you ever watched that TV program called The Deadliest Catch? Those guys are crazy. I mean, they're out there on deck and they're pulling in those cages in with a crab and those waves are washing over the top of the boat and it's pitching back and forth. Man, if I was on board that boat, I would be crying for mommy. I mean, that's scary stuff, and that's pretty much what was happening here because these were seasoned sailors. These were guys that knew how to navigate rough seas. They knew how to use their equipment, but yet they were panicking. They were freaking out. So what was Jesus doing? Amazingly, he was sound asleep, actually asleep in the lower part of the boat. Let me ask you this. Does it ever seem to you as though God is asleep? In other words, that he is not paying attention. It can be rather disheartening when someone falls asleep when we need them. And some people can sleep through anything. My wife can do that quite well. Once she goes to sleep, she's asleep. Me, a bird chirps and I wake up. I'm a relatively light sleeper, and it doesn't take much to get me up. And if there's noises, it's hard for me to go to sleep and so forth. But it's really discouraging when someone falls asleep in your presence. Have you ever been talking with someone and had them actually fall asleep while you're talking? Let me restate the question. Have you ever preached a sermon? I've had people fall asleep. And by the way, I don't know if you all know this, but I can actually see you. I see you. I see you in the balcony too. In the back of the balcony, and I know when you're going to sleep. You're not fooling me. Now, you should be happy I don't point you out. There are those telltale signs, when you act like you're praying. You just like this. But when your head lurches, like when people laugh and you look around with that blurry-eyed look and you go back to prayer again, All right. One time the Apostle Paul was preaching, and apparently I'm not the only long-winded preacher out there because he was going on and on. And one guy was sitting up high, like you guys in the balcony, so be careful now. He was near the edge of the window, and while Paul was preaching, he fell out of the window to his death. His name was Eutychus. So they came and interrupted Paul. Paul, a man just fell to his death while you were preaching. Paul stops the service and he goes out and he prays for Eutychus to be raised again from the dead. And then like any good preacher, Paul goes back and finishes his sermon. I like that. But yeah, people do fall asleep. But listen, God never does.